I drank on my own from a young age, stealing the mum's vodka and stuff like that, and trying to fill it
Yeah.
back up with water. But I knew I had a problem then because I would have a sip and then I would like, oh, I need to go and have another one. But looking back at it now, obviously hindsight's a beautiful thing. And I was an alcoholic from a young age.
For over 25 years, alcohol was part of Paul's life. It was how he dealt with pain, how he showed up, and how he escaped. And for a long time it worked, or at least it felt like it did. Because on the surface, everything looked fine. But underneath, the anxiety was building, and the anger was growing, and the gap between who he was and who he wanted to be kept getting wider. And everything had to change. And this is Paul's story on the Sober Motivation Podcast. Great to have you back for another episode here on the podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop your thoughts of this episode in the comments below. Welcome back to another episode of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Today we've got Paul with us. Paul, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Brad.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, man. What was it like for you growing up?
Yeah, for me growing up, it was quite a sort of turbulent and chaotic childhood. And it was pretty crazy, man. It was lots of stories to tell, wild ride at times, and yeah, drinking was a prominent part of my childhood and of growing up.
Yeah. What were some of the stories? And if anybody can't notice, kind of with your accent there, where did you grow up?
So I'm from England, as you can tell with the accent. I grew up actually in Bedfordshire, the outskirts of London, for a good 12 years of my life, and then I moved to London in a young early teens type of age. So yeah, it was great. Like where I lived, it was like full of green. It was very countryside, chalk hills of Bedfordshire. Yeah, and it was fun. You could go out, and it's a safe place. You could go out and ride your bike and go and explore. So we did a lot of that during the summers. Bike rides, exploring, and things like that.
Yeah. What was the other part of it that you were kind of hinting towards earlier, the chaotic part? I mean, what are some of your memories too from growing up in that sense?
I think the chaotic part was actually my childhood. And, I was a single parent home. There was, my mother was young. There was a lot of partying, around a lot of partying, around a lot of adults, which was good. Lots of christenings, lots of birthday parties, weddings. There was always something going on which might involve family members and really access to alcohol from a young age, like I'd be at christenings and I'd have a drink from a really young age. So it was quite wild in that sense as a start, and it sort of just carried on. I just stayed on that hill, so to speak, going into my adolescence and my younger teenage ages, really.
Yeah. Anything that you could put a finger on too that you struggled with growing up? I mean, I know you've listened to the podcast and heard a lot of the stories. Everybody has sort of a different experience for things. Is there anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, I think it wasn't too long ago. I've been in counselling for the last 2 years, actually. And prominent part of me growing up was, I was molested as a young man, as a young boy, from I think the age of 8. There was some sexual abuse in there. So I didn't really deal with that until my early 40s. So it's a matter of just sort of holding on tight to all the emotions and what was going on, the confusion, and just trying to sort of, trying to blank it out with whatever I could, whether it be fun, friends, alcohol, obviously being one of them, drugs as well. In my later teens and my early teens and 20s going on. That was really a prominent part of me growing up, but the realization was quite tough.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man, for sharing that too. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. Not something I've personally, went through or worked through, but I've had a lot of people share on the podcast too about how that affected them and how not really talking about it usually for a long time, kind of bottling it up and holding it in. So at 12, I'm getting this picture painted here of, like a lot of living life around you, right? Parties, gatherings, a lot of alcohol, that was probably fairly normalized, right? Gatherings and alcohol
Absolutely. Yeah, it was quite my superheroes or people I would look up to would be people that, are involved in party lifestyle or involved in, more criminal activities, which came with, the party lifestyle, which came with, all of that. It comes together, doesn't it? At 12, though, I still had that sort of innocence about me, and I was still trying to find my way and still trying to have good friends around me. But yeah, my first experience of drinking was that age, really. It's funny you mentioned that because that was my first experience of getting drunk in a park with friends at the time. And yeah, really enjoying it. I think that sort of led to reaching for the bottle in the cabinet area because there was always alcohol in the house. My mother now is still a heavy drinker and always has been. So alcohol was really accessible from a young age. I didn't have to ask someone to go to the shops and get it for me. I think the legal age you can buy alcohol here is 18. But we really start drinking from a young age. It's really part of our culture, the English culture, to sort of get together and gather and and have a drink. So 12 was that age where I found experiencing my first drunken episode, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I was buzzed by it, though. I didn't have a hangover. I was on a ride, Brad. Really felt like I was on a fairground ride. Whenever I used to get quite drunk, or inebriated.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting too, because people covering a lot of ground with a lot of different stories. People have different experiences, right? Some people get sick. They maybe, have too much, right? We're not necessarily experts at that stage when we first get started, but they still go back to it. Other people, I think I'm more in line with you, man. It was just the most beautiful thing. I felt like all my insecurities, every worry I ever had in the world, like how insecure I was talking to girls and connecting with people. I felt like all of that just kind of faded away. And I was like this different version of myself that people seemed interested in, kind of as like this party or let loose or, which wasn't me at all, but I enjoyed it. I feel like everybody I have on the podcast from England, they always first start drinking in a park. I mean, is there something with that? Like when you say a park, do you mean like a playground or like place to hang out, or what is that?
I think generally this very green, as you know, if you've been here, it's a very green country. So generally in these green zones or green areas, so you call it a field, there'll always be a kids park where there'll be like a seesaw, kids amusement, so call it seesaw, kids amusement toys, swings and things like that. I didn't want to get cross over, but yeah, so that would be like a place to gather. So it wasn't far from school. It was in between where I lived and where I went to school, which is about 15, 20 minutes. So it was easy to meet people from school and, have my first sort of experience with drink and girls. And I was very much a shy boy. I was labelled the shy boy growing up. That was a lot to do with my experiences of this sort of the abuse. And I was quiet because of it. So having that drink, that rush, that peeling everything back and being able to be liked, that was my first initial feeling. I was liked. I felt I could be myself, so to speak. So yeah, it was a lot. It was a gateway to a different life or a different me. So I was never going to put it down anytime soon.
Yeah, it was sort of, it made a whole lot of sense. It's interesting how that happens, though, for some of us, right? Because for some of us, the first time we drink it, it just makes total sense. It checks so many boxes for our life. And then other people, I'm sure that there's so many people who they drink for the first time and they might not drink again for another 2 years to say, oh, that was just disastrous. But I think what you touched on there too with the abuse and your experiences in your life is that you had all of that happen and then it affected you in a way, in a lot of ways. And then this was sort of an escape or a way to numb or a way to come out of your shell maybe a little bit. Like, is any of that accurate?
Yeah, I think all of it's accurate, actually. I came out of my shell. I never had a hangover. It was on a ride whenever I was, drinking. It was great. This is fun. I'm excited. What can I do next? Or everything had been numbed and I felt like, like you say, the Superman jumping off a 10-floor building. It was just like, wow, this is great. This is the way for me. I could go to parties. I think I went to my first sort of underage party, which was allowed for under 16s, and I had a drink. Like most people didn't drink. I drank before I went. And I was like, this is fantastic. Like, I felt more important, and I felt accepted. And that's important for me to say that, actually, to really touch on that acceptance. And it was something I was dealing with throughout my childhood and my later years, actually, my 20s, my 30s. I kept on I didn't jump off. I didn't ever get off the ride.
Yeah. Well, you have now, but back then, no, you were riding it to the last stop. Where do
Um,
things go? Where do things go for you from there too? And what if you were caught drinking? I mean, would it have been a big deal or no?
no, no, absolutely not. I think, I was a little bit encouraged by elders, the elder part of my family, to let come on, don't be shy. Let your hair down, have this if that helps. Walking around with a lot of pain and a lot of insecurities and a lot of issues. And again, my childhood was, like I said, was quite chaotic. So yeah, it was. It wasn't. There was a lot going on, if I could say, in
Yeah.
my own head. And I think, going back to your question, I didn't get stopped, which led to, like, I think when I was about 16, between 16 and 18, I started to smoke, a lot
Yeah.
of weed. I smoked a lot of weed, to the point where I was just like getting up and smoking a lot. Yeah, not going to school, that type of thing. It was, and then I was in a different crowd then. I was like, is jumping through all these crowds and of acceptance. Oh, I could be accepted here. I can, around a load of guys who can smoke. So yeah, then I started with that, and I'd sort of lived quite a normal, tried to live a normal life, tried to get a job, but I always had this sort of party excitement. Always knew I could turn back to the excitement, that party style lifestyle that I was sort of used to. I knew of from a young age. I grew up around it, so it didn't feel abnormal going to a party and not being known. It was, it was quite, if anything, it was exciting for me to do something like that. As long as there was alcohol involved, I'd be excited by all that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like, even to me, I mean, from what I'm hearing, drinking for you, substance use, the smoking, the drinking was a big self medication from the beginning, from the early days. A way
Yeah,
to quiet down maybe whatever was going on between your ears a little bit.
yeah, absolutely. I think, there was moments in that time where I drank on my own from a young age, like, stealing the mum's alcohol bottles, like the vodka and stuff like that, and trying to fill it
Yeah.
back up with water. But I knew I had a problem then, because I would have a sip, and then I would, like, oh, I need to go and have another one. And then I'd have another one, and then before you knew it, I'd like halfway through a bottle of vodka from the ages of 12, 14. I was like, didn't bat an eyelid. But looking back at it now, obviously hindsight's a beautiful thing, and I can look back and think, wow, like, I was an alcoholic from a young age. It was just the buzz it gave me was just excitable, that's what I was yearning for. And that, stay away from the sort of darker side and the thoughts and the sorrow and the pain, that you carry through going through sort of childhood abuse, yeah, and
Yeah.
that type of experiences.
Yeah. Where do things like look like for you, or what do things look like for you on the tail end of high school? Did you drop out of school then or no?
Yeah, absolutely. I just smoked my way through it. The
Yeah.
later years, I smoked loads of weed, and it was pretty good weed back then, though. It wasn't it wasn't too much chemicals. No, it was pretty good. It was, it wasn't too much. It didn't wrong you too much, and I would, I'd get up, and that would be my day, and smoking, and part of it until at least my early 20s I was a heavy smoker. I wasn't really too concerned about working or going to school or going to college. I did try. I tried to go to college, and I dropped out. I tried to go to university and
Yeah.
study creative art, and again I dropped out. I think I was those years. after school or leaving school years. We call it sort of the GCSE years, the serious point where you've got to go and get a job and, you've got to have certain qualifications. I was like, nah, forget that. I'm just going to smoke. I'm going to smoke my way through these years and see what happens, see where I am.
Yeah. And that's after high school. So just leaning into smoking and hanging out. I mean, what you said there too, I think is, one of the interesting things about it. I mean, hindsight's 2020, but I mean, tell me your take on this. When you're going through it, I mean, maybe there's a little bit here and there sense and understanding and honesty with ourselves that like this isn't the best, path to be on. But I think part of it too, the denial is so deep that I don't know, man. I didn't really realize how, like, where I was headed. People around me would mention, hey, like, this isn't good. My parents, whatever. I mean, people would mention stuff. And I mean, I just looked at them like they were crazy. Like, I just knew what was best for me and it just living recklessly and just doing whatever. It really had no future. But at the time, I couldn't see it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it took like moments of, sitting in a cell. Like there'd be moments I'd get in trouble with the police. I'd be out smoking, drinking, causing antisocial behaviour generally. And I'd get in trouble when like end up in a night in a cell. And those moments would be like, oh, I'm touch and go now. I got into a moment, an altercation with someone coming home from a girlfriend's house at the time who I see, and I was drinking throughout the day and I did some bodily harm and did some grievous bodily harm, got into a lot of trouble, got caught, went to court for it. And I was like 1 minute away from a jail sentence. So I got 200 and they call it community service. So I got a maximum hours of community service. And this was in my early 20s. And that was enough for me to be like, okay, maybe if I want to smoke or if I want to drink, I might just need to just hold back a bit and moderate it.
Yeah.
So I can try and live normally, try and go and get a job, and try and be upstanding. Because I was looking at any more trouble, I would have been put in jail basically because of the criminal activity.
Yeah. So this incident here was kind of an eye opener for you of like connecting the dots of, okay, when I drink, I open up the door for potential trouble or to get myself in trouble or to, kind of act your character. Probably sober, you wouldn't be doing that stuff.
No, I was very angry. Like, as you can maybe imagine, I was very angry as a teen, very confused and angry. So, yeah, it would bring the sort of demon out of me depending on what I was drinking. So, very much so, yeah, I was definitely angry.
What does your life look like outside of, the drinking and smoking? Like, are you working through your early 20s here? Where are you living? Like, what does that picture look like?
Yeah, so there we go. The lifestyle just continued to be chaotic, really. Like, I think I moved out when I was about 16 of my mum's home, or kicked out. It's like, I've had enough of you. Like, this is crazy. You need to go and sort your life out. So I think I moved out and went to live with my father because, we were a single parent, and tried that for size. Didn't work out. And then I thought, oh, well, I can't go back and, get myself a girlfriend, and started living with a girlfriend and working whatever job I could to make ends meet, to pay the rent. It's just chaotic. When I look back at it now, like there was no like foundation. There was no settle. I didn't feel settled. So yeah, my early 20s, I was in and out of work basically, and doing whatever I could to make ends meet. I was just happy to be accepted socially. Happy to be part of a group that drinks, smokes, goes out, parties. I was really happy with that part of my life. Yeah, very unstable.
Yeah. How did you feel on the inside? Like, did you have any sober moments to reflect? I mean, you mentioned sort of the nights in jail, but did you have any sort of moments to reflect on how you were feeling about where things were?
Oh, I'll be completely honest with you, and I am on the podcast to be absolutely that. And no, there was no self-reflection. There was no remorse, even in regards to getting in trouble and nearly going to jail. Didn't feel remorseful for it. I think, if I'm as honest as well, I just like my status. I just like the status quo, what alcohol and drugs and drug abuse brang for me as a person of that time. So I didn't ever really self-reflect. I was just like, right, I'm on this ride now. Let's not come off and let's not let's not break down, basically. So yeah, it was sort of, I went into my early 20s with the same attitude. I was just going to stay on this lifestyle of partying and rock and roll. Yeah.
Which is interesting. I mean, where you're at now and you reflect back on sort of that stage, I mean, what do you kind of put a finger on it as? Like, is this just a big distraction from what's actually going on with you, maybe internally, or everything that you're avoiding? And it's like, hey, if I just keep going to bars and hanging out with people and just pouring substance on it, maybe I can avoid, or I don't have to sort of maybe deal with life, or no?
Yeah, I think it was, yeah, it was true avoidance from what had happened, what I went through as a child. I think, yeah, it was just real avoidance, really. And like I said, didn't really want to deal, didn't want to go there with, the sort of abuse, what I experienced. And it was easy. Like I always said to people, like, drink alcohol. It really does what it says on the tin. It really does. Like, if you want what the instructions are there for you, they are clear. That was always my lean to drug. It was always alcohol. Like I said, I smoked, I dabbled with Class A substances, but alcohol was like, this is my friend. This is doing exactly what it needs to, which is just take away all the pain, take away all the sorrow, and just park it. Time being, isn't it? You just park it, and face it the next day, and then obviously you start again, start drinking.
Yeah. How much were you drinking?
Oh man, I think for at my heaviest sort of stage, I went. We used to go on holiday a lot, and holidays was the prime time to really let my hair down, and I'd go through, Jägermeister bottles of Jägermeisters for like breakfast, really, and sort of got myself a bit of a name through just
Yeah.
shot in Jaeger. Like, everyone used to call me. I got myself a bit of a name for it, and I would say in all I'd drink at least 2 to 3 bottles of wine, maybe a night, and then I would start on beer as well. So that was sort of later when I started, sort of later in my life. But a lot of the time it was just whatever I could get my hands on, I would drink. And it wasn't sometimes a lot of volume. It was just the consistency. I wasn't bothered what I drank, but I'd make sure I'd always be drinking, whether it be cans of Pilsner or bottles of brandy. There was always something in my hand.
Yeah, as long as you had something. Anybody mention anything to you about how much you're drinking, or the other people, or the other people you're hanging out with drinking the same way?
I think, no, I think I was the guy who would drink more. So I was the guy who would hang out with friends and we'll drink, 16 cans or whatever it might be. And that might not be enough for me. I'd be like, I want more. I want a bottle of cider, or I want to start on some brandy, and if no one's joining me, I'll just go home and start drinking on my own. So at times people wouldn't see a lot of the drinking I'd be doing, and I started to drink a lot at home during COVID. Don't want to jump too far ahead, but yeah, that's when I sort of started to really unravel.
Yeah, during COVID, yeah. Going back to, like, say, approaching, your 30s here. I mean, is there anything that stand out? I mean, a big part of this too is probably the drinking is still there, is part of it. But did anything else sort of change up in your life as well, or no?
Yeah, I became a father from a young age. I was a father from the age of 20.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and by the age of 30, had 2 children by then. And by the age of 30, I was nice and settled by then, Brad. I had full-time work. I had money in the bank. I had holidays. I started playing recreational sport as well, which involved a lot of drinking. One being rugby I played as well, which is a lot of drinking involved in that. So I was really like, I started to settle down a bit, I was with someone who I'd met from school. And again, that was turbulent, but again, she stuck by me. So there was that 30-year-old was like, okay, maybe I can continue this, but at a little bit more of a grown up level, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Okay. So a few more details there. So yeah, 2 kids by 30. And how did you kind of turn things around though? Did you even get full-time work and sort of, like this stuff? Like, did you sort of have an awakening there of some sort of?
Yeah, no, definitely. So the children was like, right, okay, you need to be responsible. My first child was like, right, I was 21, be responsible, get a job. Even if you want to party and take drugs, just there needs to be money coming in. It's not just for me now. So there was definitely an awakening with that. But yeah, the partying continued at more of a adult stage. Like, I was like, instead of me going to the club or bar, I was like, right, I'm going on holiday, and I can spend as much as I want on alcohol, with friends. And I think there was time I went 9 holidays in 1 year, just absolutely drinking my head off. I was like, wherever I could go, like the cheapest place for drink, it was like, yeah, this is heaven.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like I said, the excitement I got from drinking was one of a kind. Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably one of the earlier red flags to kind of look out for when I see people who don't, I'll call it a drinking problem. We can call it whatever we want, an alcoholic, whatever. When I see people who don't struggle with that, they drink and they go to sleep on the couch. Like they fall asleep because it's a depressant. It makes you tired. But there's a percentage of us out there that we'll clean the house, we'll cook meals, we'll do this, we'll tinker in the garage, we'll get all fired up, get energized from it. And it's kind of what I'm picking up from you. I mean, it shoots you out of a cannon.
Yeah. So a lot of this come up in counselling. Like I said, the latter years, 2 years of it, it's just come to a bit of a halt. It's come to a stop, and rightly so. I think. Yeah, it was like you say, I was never a point. Well, it got to a point where I'd drink to black out, and especially on spirits and Jägermeisters. It was like got to a point where I was drinking and I was blacking out, and it was like, what happened? With say to friends, well, what happened? He said, you don't remember what you did? It was like, no. I was like, I don't. What happened? And then I'd have to get the story the following day. So. Yeah, that sort of excitement started. It was always there, but it started to change. There was a change, like a chemical change in me. It was like, okay, now this is getting a little bit dangerous with how my body's reacting to alcohol.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people share about that too with the blackouts. They have no idea when that's going to happen at some point. Some people that even starts from the beginning, they start having blacking out like every time they're drinking, which I'm like, which part of me is like, okay, like, can that be true? But that's what people share. I mean, I don't know all the details. I mean, I had a few blackouts in my life. I mean, 2, one of them, man, I was behind the wheel for 45 minutes, lost. And a couple of my buddies had to put the pieces of the puzzle together for me because you don't remember anything. And I mean, it was just kind of one of the many times where I thought to myself, now reflecting back, like, dude, this could have been tragic, man.
Yeah.
Very tragic, for my life and whatever else was around me. But when only thing I remember is leading up to that, man. I had drank a whole bottle of Grey Goose vodka. I thought I was some sort of celebrity or something. And I drank this bottle of vodka, and then I got behind the wheel, and then it was going to go on some sort of mission or something. And I woke up the next day at my buddy's place and covered and marked up, scratched up, just banged up, face, everything. And he started filling me in with the story about how I ended up there. And he was a good 30, 45 minutes away. And I had lost my phone, and I do anyway. I think back on those, and I'm just thinking, man,
Yeah.
There's one of the most beautiful things about not drinking anymore is I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. So you get into this blackout stage. When was this? I mean, is this kind of the COVID kickoff?
No, like to blackout status was like going into my 30s and 40s. I was like going out
Okay.
a lot. I was really like, okay, I'm at a stage now. I've been drinking for a long time. I can handle this. I can go into parties. I know what I'm doing. This is great. There'd be a moment where, okay, Paul's had too much, to the point where again, I'm blacking out, waking up like, what am I doing here? And I think the craziest thing for me, even listening to you, Brad, back on that is, despite all that, friends would still be like, are you going out on Saturday? Or are you coming out next weekend? I'm like, yeah, of course I am. Like, I'm arranging it. 30 of us going out. Let's all get absolutely hammered, or, go into Camden and listen to bands, listen to music. I really started in that 30, 40s, really started to sort of try and indulge in a more of an alternative scene. And alcohol was a huge part in that. Yeah, sort of leaning into sort of, music and skinny jeans and, and tight shirts, winkle pickers, and cameras. Like, what is going on? When I look back now, it's quite funny. But yeah, it was a real dark moment, and I think something happened where I sort of took myself out of that scene and just decided to start drinking at home. And that's when COVID kicked in for me.
Mm,
I was
yeah.
I was drinking at home a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
COVID, so COVID just accelerated that. I was working. Yeah, I was working. I was drinking like midday. I was the kids at home. I was like, let's just have a drink. I can
Yeah.
work. I can drink. So this is fantastic. And I thought at the time I was drinking red wine, a lot of it. And I thought, because it's red wine, it's not, what's the worst that could happen? It's not Jägermeister, it's not vodka, it's not brandy, it's not Grey Goose. You
Yeah.
know, this is easy, this is light. But yeah, that's when I was like, okay, I've got a problem.
Yeah.
I, yeah.
Even interesting there when you go back to, your friends and your relationships and all these people that you're, hanging out with. Would anybody have had any idea of what you were actually going through? Or did they just see it as one big party for your life?
No, I think, I was like the best, if I could put it, like chameleon. And yeah, and I was, and it'd give me a drink, and I could be in a room with all different types of groups and different types of people. So I was really good at protecting myself. And even so now, I've got this sort of defensive mechanism and protection that I sometimes layer on. And a realization now is it's a beautiful thing, and anyone who's gone through any type of turbulent childhood to try counselling. I was dead against it. I always thought it was for people that could afford it, or I suppose what you see on TV, the shrink, around these rich families, and I just didn't
Yeah.
think it was for me. So no, absolutely not. And I go back to that. Being honest, it was just literally a mask. And like I said, I go back to alcohol does what it says on the tin. So
Mm,
it masked everything very, very well.
yeah.
Yeah, so they just sort of excited me, really.
Yeah. That thought there too about therapy kind of not being for you or being for others. I thought right away, I was like, therapy's for people who need it. And I'm thinking about the life and the story you've shared up until this point. I don't know if you would be at a spot where you thought you would need it. Like, it seems like this is sort of, it does what it says on the tin. I mean, you're drinking. So it's like you're getting sort of that escape and not really having to maybe face sort of the heaviness of what you've been through or how you grew up, fully, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, exactly that. And in all fairness, I always had sort of people to talk to on a deeper level, especially my mother. She's great. She's been a pin in my life, and ups and downs between us. But she's always been there. Always someone I could turn to. But she is always, bless her heart, always had alcohol in her life as well. So it was a bit like a mirror, really. Sit and drink with my mum at times, and wouldn't bat an eyelid, So I didn't have to face anything, and yeah, I didn't have to face anything, Brad, really, during
Yeah.
the moments of drinking.
Yeah. And then
Yeah,
COVID hits and you get into red wine becomes the thing, and then you maybe scale it back earlier, and you're working, and that kind of opens up a window. I mean, such a relatable story, I'm sure, for so many people, right? Is there were so many
Yeah,
jokes and everything flying around. It was just like this normalized thing of, drinking and while working and all this stuff. You didn't
yeah,
have to go in somewhere. So if you're a little bit hungover, whatever, you could kind of keep your camera off. Like a lot of people went through this, but I mean,
uh,
I think there's like two sides to it. Weird, oddly enough, I think there's two sides to it. I think for some people, what this did was exposed the problem
mm,
maybe sooner than if it hadn't have happened. Maybe other people could have carried on, maybe another 10 years or something before it was like, oh my gosh. But this sort of phase right here, I think really, like you said, kind of put a mirror up to people and sped things up, but then also gave them sort of an opportunity to get honest about where things really were. What was your experience with that?
oh man, like, honestly, like COVID was, don't know if it was a blessing or in disguise, really. The craziest thing was everything else was closed apart from the wine merchants. I used to go to the wine merchants with my partner and was getting to tasting wine. It was like good during COVID. It was like I would never dream of doing anything like that. And it was just an escapism again. So I was buying boxes, man. I was like, boxes delivered and going through boxes of wine a week with my partner at the time. And I was doubling her amount. So like if she'd have one, I'd have two bottles, that is. And I was working. I'd never turn my camera on. I might as well I disappeared during those years. And it's weird because, like, even though I was doing all that, I was still trying to be hyperactive, still trying to run a business, like my own sort of side hustle. I was trying to run side hustles at the time as well. I was turning up like really sozzled, really. And I was just going through the motions, man. It was like, then it got to a point I got really bad anxiety. And it was like, right, you've got to go back to work. And I was like, well, I don't think I can. I'm not in a great way. And I think a lot of people didn't believe me. They were like, nah, he's just, he's trying it on,
Yeah.
I'm in a bad way. Like, so from that, I went to A&A, and it was organised, I think it was organised through work, getting back to work. And I went to AA. Yeah. I
Yeah.
went to, and just during COVID. Yeah.
So what was the process there? What kind of led you up to there? Take me a few days before you walk
Uh,
in. You went to a meeting, or you went in person or online?
no,
Online?
online. It was all online. I was like, I can't be seen. I'm like, I've
Okay.
got a problem. And they were like, okay, like here's the like back to work care team. And that was like a discussion with them. And it was like, well, what's going on? It's like, well, I'm drinking a lot to the point where I've got really bad anxiety. And they were like, oh, okay. Have you thought about AA? And I was like, not really. And I was like, I ain't got a problem. Why am I going to AA? Talking about. And they were like, well, give it a try. And I said, okay. So I'll be honest, I tried. I went and I had no intentions of stopping. I would go and I'd go. As soon as I finish, I'd go straight back to the pub. And I'd be shaking. And then the pub, the drink, the first initial drink was to stop the anxiety. It wasn't a matter of, okay, well, screw you, AA. It was like, whatever, I can do this and I can just go and sort my anxiety out with alcohol. And I did that for about 3 months. Didn't last long doing it, to be honest, until they sort of signed me off and said, oh, yeah, you're doing so much better now. You're drinking less. And it just didn't work. It didn't work.
Yeah. And that was what your job? So your job was like, okay, you're doing better now?
No, AA.
Oh,
Yeah,
but you
yeah,
were still
yeah.
drinking. But you were
Yeah,
still drinking.
I
Were
was
you
drinking.
telling them?
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm drinking less. They were like, make sure you have half and have water. And it's like, yeah, I'm doing it. And like doing it for, a few weeks or so. And it's like, yeah, well done. Do you want to carry this on? I was like, nah, it's fine. I'll be okay. And yeah, the minute that stopped, it was like, yeah, back on the road again.
What was so hard with you at that point to say you had a problem? Like, I think we look back now and we can, like see it clear as day, but
Yeah,
kind of about what we talked to earlier. It's hard to see it when
yeah,
you're in it, but what was the thought process of like, hey, you're going through withdrawal. It sounds like if you're having the anxiety and you need to drink, and when you drink, if it alleviated whatever you were going through, I
yeah,
would say that would be a withdrawal. What was
yeah.
the difficult part? What was so scary about just walking away? You've been drinking for since you were 12 till your late 30s or 40s. So,
Correct.
I mean,
Yeah.
you've probably covered all of the ground you're ever going to cover and experienced all of it.
Yeah.
What was so scary for you?
What was it? What was it? That is a really good question. I think I didn't want to face a lot. I didn't want to face the sort of authentic me. I didn't want to put down a bottle. I didn't want that side of me to die. So I was like, nah, I've not got a problem. And again, I was like, well, I don't drink. I would measure myself against other people. And I don't drink that much. I only have a few bottles of wine, Yeah, it's not much. And a few beers as well on top of that. It's fine. There's people in a pub that, have 10 pints a night. So I'd really like benchmark myself against the biggest alcoholic I could find. Or like, it could be someone homeless and I'd be like, yeah, he's worse. He's homeless. I think as well as where I was like able to work, where I was able to have a side hustle, where I was able to still pay my bills on time. I honestly thought I didn't have an issue, but realistically, Brad, there's a lot of people around me who were hurting, who were like having to see me not be authentic and sort of, yeah. I was hurting a lot of people around me, unfortunately, and I wasn't able to see that.
Yeah. What about joy and like happiness and those sort of things? Because you had mentioned too, like you could, pay your bills. And I think there's a lot of people that end up here, right? Like if I can pay my bills, show up to my job, do what I need to do, then there's nothing to see here. But I think it goes a lot deeper. I mean, is joy and happiness and peace a part of your life or no?
No, no. There wasn't that peace, that inner peace, and there wasn't that. There was a real sadness. Yeah, there was a real sadness there that I wasn't able to sort of deal with, and I wasn't dealing with it because I was just masking it. So there's a lot of fakeness and a lot of fake smiles and fake laughter, and as you do, which comes with alcohol. So yeah, there wasn't any real deep happiness and real inner peace really going on. There was moments, it might have been moments. It wasn't moments that I was happy to sit with, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I wouldn't stick with it. Yeah.
I mean, I think at this point too, like I'm only guessing here. Obviously, we've just met, but I think it becomes a big part of identity, of someone's identity. This is kind of who we are and what we're known. This is what we've kind of always done. Like this is what we've done for so many years. To walk away from it is scary because what is on the other side of this is so unknown. Even though I don't know if you'll relate to this or not, but this is how it was for me. I wasn't really scared of quitting. I was really scared of it all working out because I'd never lived that life before. Like being in drugs and drinking and all of that. Like I knew, even though it sucked and it came with a lot of consequences and hurt a lot of people, I knew day in and day out what to expect from that life. Like my nervous system, everything was lined up to sort of handle that rockiness. But if things worked out and I was like successful, quote unquote, relationships and got an apartment and got another car and held a job like that. I didn't know that. I was so used to losing stuff. I was so used to getting evicted. I was so used to getting fired. I was so used to people just leaving my life because I was living a train wreck. And weirdly enough, like things actually working out was scary to me because then I had something to lose. I think when I was not doing well, I just didn't have anything to lose either. So there was like limited disappointment. That's sort of like my take on it. Anything from you? Any thoughts from you?
Yeah. I love the chaos, man. It was something I was used to from a really young age. Like it was part of like the turbulence. It was like me as well. Like I knew how to be turbulent. I knew how to change my moods as well. Like be exciting and be angry and be emotional and then simmer down a bit. It was like I loved all that turbulence. It was just something that came with me and something that I just enjoyed, and the alcohol just was, like I said, was another level to that excitement. I think, my partner, God bless her, she's always been that gentler side, that sensible side. And she makes me see something in me that I never ever saw in myself, if I'm honest. And I think it's been just over 2 years of no drinking, or sobriety, should I say. And that peace and that happiness and that joy has started to grow. And I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to be a role model, really. I was just ready to I was just in a place where I just want to make things work in this most craziest way I can, but it's all going to come together, because look what I can do.
Yeah.
But I wasn't ready to be that sensible, that successful, that role model to not just to my children, but to just like the general public, so to speak. Yeah, I suppose you can relate to that as well as,
Yeah.
ask me
Of
things. Yeah.
Yeah. So your partner that you're with now, you're with her before too when you're drinking?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
she,
What'd she
like,
say? What'd she say about all of it?
uh, we've got some good stories to tell, and I think now she would say like you're so much a better person, a stand-up person, a role model, easier to talk to, understandable. And yeah, I shared. She never understood. I never shared moments of my childhood, experiences of my childhood with her until I was sober as well. So I think knowing that as well, a lot clicked for her. She could understand my behaviour, made a bit more sense of why I was sort of the way I was going around, being chaotic and sad.
She's proud of you. She's
Yeah,
proud of you,
absolutely.
Paul. Oh, that's good, man.
Absolutely, yeah. She is very, very proud of me, and yeah, you do need people that there seems to be those sort of angel type people that sort of will see the good in you. You do need those people in your life. So yeah, it's nice to be at a place in my life now where I'm at peace and where I'm giving back a lot with
Yeah.
sort of community, give back to the community through like health and fitness and exercise. So yeah, there's a lot. It's a complete turnaround, and it's been quite difficult, if I'm honest. Sort of accepting the more authentic me. Like I'm much more vulnerable than I ever was. I would never go back.
Yeah. Walk us through the story. I mean, leading up to the day you quit.
Oh wow. So yeah, it was Thursday night. Was the date night. It was literally just a night and evening for me to just drink as much as I could. It was like I would work from home on a Friday. So I knew if I go out on a Thursday with my partner, I just drink like heavily. And I drank so heavily and I was just horrible. I was drinking out and then I come home and I was drinking. And I was just remember just being really, really sad and horrible and abusive, really verbally abusive to my partner and to my children. I was just in a really deep place. And I was doing that most every other Thursday. And it was just got to a point I was just drinking heavily on my own on the sofa until I just blacked out, knowing that I didn't have to go to work on a Friday. And yeah, the sort of the abuse as well to like my children and my partner, just it got too much. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed of like turning into something that I'd said I never would turn into. And again, not to mention my childhood, I witnessed domestic abuse as a young man. And I was scared of that man who committed the domestic abuse. I was scared of turning into that man. And I was, I was there basically. And my partner was like, you're going to have to stop. And for some reason, I went up to New Year's Eve. It's like, I'm going to drink as much again. I'm going to drink. I'm going to drink. It's Christmas, New Year. How much do we drink around Christmas and New Year's? Like, it's like the perfect time to escape, isn't it? Of all the responsibilities of a man and, presents you have to put underneath the tree. So it was a perfect time for me to drown my sorrows. And yeah, the New Year's Day, I didn't say much, and that was my last sort of drink. I drank it away. And that was it. It was a moment of realization who the man I was turning into, which was I could abuse me, but I wasn't ever really prepared to abuse people like my real close family or my partner, really. So, yeah, it got to that point for me, really, Brad.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that too, man. It's interesting to even kind of circle all the way back. I hear a lot of people, they grow up and they see stuff around them, right? And then you kind of make this commitment. I think internally we say, you know what, I just never want to be like that, whatever it is, right? And then, sometimes people share too. They circle back and realize that one thing or whatever impacted them in such a negative way that they could be headed right in that direction, if they don't look under the hood and see what is actually going on. So in that moment, so what do you do? I mean, your first day, you're just like, I'm done drinking. I mean, you make it sound so simple there, Paul.
I white knuckled, man. I was, oh dear, like the first 3 months, Jesus, like it was, I was like, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't really talk. I was in a hole. I just white knuckled it. I just said, that's it. I'm not going to drink.
Yeah. Why? Like, why did that approach feel comfortable for you, or did you decide that way?
I've always been active, into a healthy lifestyle. So I knew, like, if I go to the gym, if I occupy my brain with walking and going to the gym, that should be fine. Then, like, that's where my life sort of turned and I found peace. I started walking a lot. I've done quite a few trail walks over the 2 years, a few mountains, I think Mount Snowdon, Scaffold Pike, Three Peaks Trail, a lot of walking, something I wouldn't have ever have done before sobriety.
Yeah. So you did find it a little bit challenging in some sense to
absolutely
kind of just do the white knuckling version of things. Yeah.
I wouldn't advise it, but I'm all or nothing. There's no way I would have been like, okay, I can drink adult like, or, what's the word, moderately. I can't remember. Moderately is just not in my vocabulary. It's just never going to happen.
Yeah. But maybe to get some support too from other people, whether it sounds like you did get into counseling at some point and just some support and some help from other people. Yeah. But I think when you get to the point where you got, where I got, where people, I mean, if moderation would have worked for us, we never would be on the podcast. Like we would have just carried on with life and moderately drank and whatever. Had way more fun times than disastrous times, and we would have just carried on. But I think it's when you go through, especially you drank for way longer than I drank. When you go through all of that, I mean, if it would have worked, it would have worked a long time ago if that was in the cards.
Yeah, I think the start of that, I was trying to educate myself. What's going to work? Do I need to listen to podcasts? Do I need to go for walks? Do I need to go into nature? Like nature's huge for spirituality, isn't it? So, there was a lot of healing that needed to be done, and that's where I stumbled across your podcast, and I've been listening to it for 2 years. I don't think I can't imagine I've missed an episode actually. I've listened to every, whether I'm driving in a car, whether I was in bed at night, anything to sort of help me distract away from the romanticizing of of alcohol. And yes, I do. I still do romanticize about alcohol. Of course I do. I'm a human being. But I managed to find my sobriety. I managed to find a I Am Sober group platform where a few of us are meeting up in a few weeks and trailing a mountain as well.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, there's been groups and support. A support system was crucial. I didn't just white knuckle it on my own. Don't get me wrong. I started counseling as well, which was weekly, and that sort of turned into like going back into my childhood and sort of revisiting that. But I initially started it for the sobriety to try and stay off the alcohol, because it was like, oh yeah, you could try counselling. It was also mentioned. So yeah, there was a lot of support systems going on in the background.
Yeah, and it really sounds like too. I mean, you're doing a lot of stuff. You've done a lot of stuff, but it's like reaching out for help and getting support and building some new connections, because I think that's where people can get stuck. And I think that this will hit home for you, especially because when you're used to that chaotic lifestyle, you take out the drinking, the chaos slowly fades away, life can feel really boring. Like, whoa, what do I do now? Where's all of the highs and lows? I'm off the roller coaster ride. So finding some other people. And plus, it sounds like, too, I mean, a big part of your drinking at the end, it sounds like anyway, was at home. But before that, it was connecting, it was going out, it was the social element of it, too. You have to find a replacement for that. You can't, maybe I haven't heard that from you yet, but I think for most people, you can't be hanging out with all of the same people that expect you to show up as the heavy drinker party guy, 2 years into this thing, but creating some new connections with people and just doing things a little bit different, doing your walking, doing your hiking, mountains, like that stuff's cool, man.
Yeah, I like those people, those groups that I used to hang about with are no longer, and and it's just my journey, it's my life, isn't it? And I'm trying to find connections in other ways. I'm an avid boxing coach, and I give a lot of my time, my free time, to being a boxing coach and helping young uns and senior adults, live a healthy lifestyle. Yeah, I've reached out to the church as well. Spirituality is sort of an important part of my life as well. And I think, realistically, like you say, it's just connections, like just different connections I'm looking for. I'm looking for a different type of connection. And that works for me now, where I sort of don't have to put up any sort of barriers or any fences or anything between or be defensive, so I can try and be as authentic as possible, really.
Yeah. What I'm so curious too, I mean, with sort of that element too of being authentic and
Yeah.
listening to the show for 2 years, which is cool. Thank you so much for listening along. What sparked you with the idea? Because this, to me, I get the sense that this is not what you do normally. This might be a little bit out of your wheelhouse or your comfort zone. What inspired you to reach out and be willing to share your story with countless people online?
So yeah, like I said, I've watched a lot of the podcasts, audio version. Obviously, now you've moved over to YouTube, and that's me being defensive again, going around the answer. But I think for me, yeah. So for me now, where I am, I feel like that I'm not the only one and not the only man, sort of, that's suffered and gone through quite a lot and used alcohol as a tool for my suffering. So yeah, I guessed I'd be relatable, and I wanted to just sort of show that people that you can be brave, you can share. Sharing is more important to me than anything else, any money in the world. If I can't share my knowledge or share what I think might be relatable with people, then yeah, it sort of wouldn't sit with me very well. So yeah, I think, yeah, it was just a moment where I thought, there's a lot of people on your podcast that have come and shared and been brave, and yeah, like I said, I've been listening to a few years and felt like it was a done thing to do, really, in my sort of standards and my morals to life at the moment.
Yeah. Beautiful, man. I love that. It's such a cool full circle moment too, to have people who listen to the show then come on and join. I mean, heading towards wrapping up here, Paul, what is something you can take from your sobriety journey, life, something in general, if you want to, that has really helped you out, that you could share with others that might be struggling to get or stay sober?
I would say, again, just share. Try and share with people close to you what you're going through. And I don't like the idea of this number, counting down numbers. I'm 800 days, I'm 600 days. Like, there's countless times where I've said, I've done dry October and lasted a week. And of course, I tried to be sober. I tried a few days and I wasn't ready for that, the adverse effects of sobriety, and just jump back on. But I tried, so whether it's your first time, your seventh or your 700th time, like, just keep trying and share those moments with people, because you'd be really, really surprised how relatable they are. You're not going through it on your own. But yeah, I think that's what I would take from it all.
Yeah, just keep showing up, man. Keep getting back up. Well, it's so interesting too, right? Because on that thought, I mean, I think there's a lot of people to where they try and maybe they don't achieve their goal. Like, I think that is a reality for so many people, and it might take a couple of goes at things, or they might still be up in that mix. But I hear your story, and I've heard so many others. I mean, you woke up that day. I mean, it wasn't like you were weeks in the making of like, I'm getting sober. It doesn't sound that way anyway. It sounds like this is the direction you were going. You had tried some things, and then, for whatever reason, I mean, that first day, that January 1, I mean, did you think this would work out? Like, were you that convinced, or were you just like, I'm just giving this a go?
No, I was like, I need to stop. I was getting to a point where I was just really spiteful and angry and really like quite venomous with alcohol. And it was taking me less to get there. Like, I wasn't having to drink much. It was like, okay. And and I had some like near death experiences like before that, not going back, 7 years, 8 years ago. I nearly died from blood poisoning, and that still wasn't enough for me to be like, I'm going to stop drinking. It really took me to to realize, hang on, I'm turning into something, this monster that I was never going to turn into. There's something I saw as a child, that I didn't ever want to experience anyone else seeing me be that way, or have anyone else experience that. So no, it was like, I need to, this is it for me. Like I said, I tried so many times to just be dry January and dry November, and growing a mustache for October or November. I tried all of it. It was just, it was all sort of a fad, really. Like, it was never going to work that way. So again, like, I think they always say, isn't it, like, you won't quit until you really want to quit. And I believe that wholeheartedly. But again, the support that I had, the support system that I put in place helped along the way. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you're not going to do it. It's just like anything else in life. I mean, we're not humans. We're not going to do stuff we don't want to do, that we're not interested in.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Paul, so much for jumping on and sharing your story. Anything for closing?
Oh, no, just look, honestly, Brad, thank you for having me on your show. I think your show is amazing. I'm on the platform as well, which is also equally amazing. Maybe slightly different time zone going on. I don't know what time it is for you, but it's 7 o'clock anyway. It's 7:30 in the evening for me, so it's not too much of but it's a good time. But no, just big thanks to you, really. Like, honestly, yeah, what you're doing is amazing, and you're reaching out to so many people, and yeah, with your journey and your story as well, which is a pretty crazy one as well. So no, honestly, hats off to you, really, and thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, of course, Paul. Thanks so much. Huge shout out to Paul for jumping on here and sharing his story. It's so incredible just to have a regular dude, come on the podcast, share his story. Nervous in the beginning, settled in, I think, towards midway, towards the end. But it's not an easy thing to do. So huge shout out to Paul. I'll drop his contact information down in the show notes of this episode. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on Spotify and YouTube, and make sure that you're following the show wherever you listen, Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. This is a good indicator to the platforms that this is a good show, an interesting show, and they'll show it to more people. Help us grow the audience and hopefully help somebody out there. Let them know that there's another way. Paul really hit the nail on the head of how denial plays into all of this. Even with the life he was living, very turbulent at times, not really connecting the dots to alcohol being the problem or the main problem in his life, and thinking he was always going to be able to figure it out, or it would be something that would just go away. And I think for most stories, at least here on the podcast, for all of them, that's not the case. Maybe there are some people out there to where there's a transition in life and they move on from alcohol, but it's not one we hear, around here very often. So thank you as always for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.